Large numbers of the Syrian community in the United States, France and Bulgaria demonstrate rejecting the Turkish aggression against Syria. And panic spreads across the world as many non-Syrian terrorists have been returning to their countries after fighting in Syria, posing a threat to their own people. And under the title, Engineers will reconstruct Syria, the history, civilization and future, the 37th annual conference for the Engineers Syndicate kicks off. Good afternoon, this is news in English from the Syrian Arab television in Damascus. Minister of Information Omran al-Zobi asserted that Syria's stance is firm and committed to the political solution of the crisis the country is undergoing.
In an interview with the Syrian TV, al-Zobi said that no one can say that Syria has caused the failure of Geneva II conference. On the contrary, Syria agreed on the special agenda for the track of negotiations, but it seemed clear that the others wanted to undermine the Syrian state, not to find a political solution. Al-Zobi pointed out that some Arab and regional countries continue to support terrorists. These countries include Turkey, Qatar and Saudi Arabia, which have been turned to become main producers of terrorism, adding that Saudi Arabia's decisions concerning terrorism are irreverent. Also, Erdogan's government has facilitated the entry of terrorist groups not only to Kasab, but to different parts of Syria, as they have been undertaking this process 3 years ago. On the role of the media, al-Zobi said that Syria's policy is with the national media that's committed to the firm national principles and also with the freedom of the media, but against the chaos of media, adding that the Information Ministry is carrying the task of facilitating the movements of the journalists and reporters of different channels in the Syrian territories in order to assure their safety without intervening in the details of their work. Minister of Information asserted that the presidential elections will be held transparently on its set date as the situation on the ground continues to improve, which helps to increase the voters' turnout. Al-Zobi added that more than one presidential candidate will certainly be a proof of democracy and will allow the Syrian voters to express freely their political stances.
عندما تحدث في المعهد الدستوري ووفقا لقواعد الدستور خاصة المادة 8 التي تتحدث عن تعدد.
A large number of Syrian community in the United States, France, staged a sit-in in front of the Turkish embassy to express rejection of the Turkish aggression against Syria.
In support of the Syrian Arab Army in its fight against terrorism, thousands of Syrians, Armenians and Arab community in the U.S. crowded in front of the Turkish consulate in Los Angeles, condemning the attacks by the terrorist groups who are backed by Erdogan's Justice and Development government on Kasab in Latakia countryside. The participants held placards denouncing Erdogan's policies against neighboring countries and against the Armenians who more than once were exposed to displacement by Turkish-backed terrorists. In Paris, French, Armenians and Turkish citizens took part in a similar rally holding posters of President Bashar al-Assad and waving Syria flags, stressing the support and appreciation of the Syrian Arab Army in defending Syria against the armed terrorist groups which are backed and funded by the government of Turkish Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan. The participants asserted that the one who is cracking down on demonstrations and obscuring social media outlets has no right to spread democracy in the world. Armenian participants said the Syrian Arab Army is defending the last Armenian city in the Middle East, which is Kasab in Latakia, adding that the entire world should support the Syrian Arab Army in facing the Takfiri mentality, which is infiltrating to Syria through Turkey. Similarly, in Sofia, Bulgaria, crowds of the Syrian community staged a sit-in in front of the Turkish embassy in Sofia in rejection of the Turkish government's interference in the Syrian internal affairs. Participants also denounced the Turkish government's logistic, military and financial support to terrorists, particularly in the aggression on Latakia countryside and Kasab.
In the northern countryside of Latakia, a military source said that Syrian Arab Army units dealt heavy blows to the armed terrorist groups at Al-Quz mountain around post 45 and near Al-Nisr mountain, Al-Kabira mountain and the town of Al-Khadra, inflicting heavy casualties among the terrorists, killing many of them and destroying their weapons and vehicles. Syrian Arab Army cut off the most dangerous lines for the flow of terrorists from the town of Arsal in Lebanon into the Al-Qalamoun area in Damascus countryside by restoring security and stability into the town of Fleita. Over more than 3 years of the war in Syria, Fleita had been turned into a reservoir for the mercenaries and a launching pad for a number of Takfiri groups to carry out their attacks on several towns in Al-Qalamoun. Syrian television correspondent said that a large number of terrorists, most of them non-Syrian, were killed in Fleita, many others were arrested, and some of them fled away into Arsal, which was the only way to take, as the Syrian Arab Army eliminated all the terrorist gatherings in the surrounding areas, including Yabrud, Ras Al-Ain and Ras Al-Ma'ra. Syrian Arab Army units foiled an infiltration attempt by a terrorist group from the village of Al-Ghasibiyya into the village of Adwir in Homs countryside, killing many terrorists and injuring others. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that his United States counterpart John Kerry informed him that the United States rejects to supply the armed terrorist groups in Syria with anti-aircraft missiles. Lavrov said at the conclusion of talks held with Kerry in Paris that the latter stressed the U.S. rejection of that, as he added that they tackled the issue of circulated in media outlets and supplying the armed terrorist groups in Syria with anti-aircraft missiles during the United States President Barack Obama's visit to Saudi Arabia. Terrorists who have taken part in the fight in Syria and who have decided to come back to their countries triggered horror as they have pledged to carry out terrorist operations in their home countries. More about that in the following.
The Tunisian Ash-Shuruq newspaper have disclosed that scores of Tunisian terrorists who have been fighting in Syria have infiltrated to the Tunisian territories via the Libyan borders, taking advantage of the unrest that Tunisia is witnessing. The newspaper has further warned that these terrorists might carry out terrorist suicidal operations against the state's institutions and in other residential areas, adding that the last Tunisian young man who had made it himself in Syria was not more than 25 years old after he was subject to brainwashing by Takfiri and extremist sheikhs who have called the Tunisian youth to head for Syria to fight there. Needless to say that those who have been fighting in Syria belong to different nationalities, amounting to more than 80, claiming that they are fighting a jihad war, but the Syrian Arab Army has pledged to defend the homeland and to kick those terrorists out of Syria once and for all.
The Netherlands terrorist Yilmaz, a former professional soldier, fights and trains terrorists in Syria. A closer look in the following.
Dan gaan we van de sport naar het interview met Yilmaz. Nieuwsuur heeft namelijk voor het eerst een Nederlandse jihadist uitgebreid kunnen interviewen en filmen. Yilmaz, een oud beroeps...
The foreign editor Rusbek Abali of German AIM News discovered terrorist Yilmaz as journalist was looking for traces of Dutch jihadists in Syria. Rusbek Abali found a picture of terrorist Yilmaz in Syria with his Dutch uniform training some foreign terrorists.
What we're doing right now, and the purpose of all this is, I was approached by a brother that I love and that I respect, and because he knows my background, he asked me, could you give some of my fighters some extra tips and tools? We'll supply the bullets, we'll supply everything you need,
Yilmaz is a Dutchman of Turkish descent. He wanted to join commandos. He did his military service in Turkey and joined the Dutch army. Nowadays, he practices his military skills in Syria since he trains terrorists on the battle skills.
Elbow is resting on your knee, or on your left knee. Your left elbow is resting on your left knee. Your right knee is on the floor. If you want a little bit more support, you could turn your leg in.
When you looked at him, you can recognize his Dutch army uniform, including the bird, but the badges have been changed to Al-Qaeda. From his point of view, he's fighting and training the terrorists in Syria to have an Islamic state with Islamic principles.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar.
Well, this will end our news for today. Thank you for watching. For more details about Syria and the region and to view this bulletin again, you can always visit our website in English, www.syriaonline.sy. Now to the latest business and market news with Vani, but after a short break.